Welcome to Horrifically Well Read, Bled, and Said. I am so pleased to have our guest on tonight named Lindy Ryan. And the reason I'm so excited is because I have read her books, not only Bless Your Heart and Another Fine Mess, but she's about to have out Dollface, which I recently read. And the way she writes characters and women and these horror books, I'm just an immediate fan. So I'm so pleased to have her on the show. Welcome, Lindy Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
I am excited too. And I was thinking about some of the things that I could say, like to introduce you. And I was like, join us today where you can learn how to match your lipstick color to your book because that's been perfect. You said it was coincidental, but I'm like, I don't know. It was like great as you're promoting Dollface, which I have to tell you, we were in the heart. We went to like several bookstores over the weekend, and your book is as beautiful in person as I was hoping it would be. And the texture and the feeling of it, that bright, beautiful pink, it's lovely.
Oh gosh, have you seen it out in the wild already? I haven't yet.
Yes, ma'am, we
I
bought it. Of course, we bought it out in the wild. We said, "You're going home with us."
Oh, nice. That's really fun because readers will tag me, as they're seeing the book kind of be shelved early, and it's not locally shelved early anywhere. So I'm very excited to be able to walk into a bookstore and see it. And it's got, yeah, that beautiful pink pop of color. Yeah, I just can't wait to see her eyeballing me from a shelf. So I'm really excited you
Yes.
you got to do that. That's so fun.
Yes. I don't know why that happens because I don't maybe other people know more. I know there's some people in here like that author Cassandra Celia, like she works at a Barnes& and Noble, but so we went to like a small indie bookstore, then we went to one that had like specialized in really like they had like 90,000 books and it could be from any time frame, whatever. And then we went to the Barnes and Noble, like maybe, I don't know, 35, 40 miles away from us. Like we spent a whole day just trying out different bookshops. And that one north of us always seems to have different books out early. But I've also had that happen when I've seen like Brian McCauley's books out early, different things. But it always seems like the independent bookstores follow the rules and the Barnes and Noble will put it out early. So we were like, absolutely, we're getting it.
I don't have any idea. There's, mysteries abound in the publishing world, but I do know Barnes& and Noble kinda, has their own rules a little bit. So that's where I've seen it early or seen books early in the past. So it must be
Hmm.
some special insider scoop that Barnes& and Noble gets. But,
And I
yeah.
don't mind, I'll take advantage of it, you know? It's like but I know when I said that to Brian, I was like, "Why is your book out early?" And he said, "It's okay." He was told, at least by, like, who he publishes with, I guess, that it does all count towards the pre-order sales, so hopefully that helped you.
Yes, that is a 1,000,000% true, and we're always very grateful for those pre-order sales, and they make a really big difference for the book's kinda success, for the author, for the publisher. So getting books in hands early is a good thing for everyone all the way around, readers included, right?
Absolutely. Well, just again with the cover, I mean, not only it's, like, texturized, but I'm thinking about how so many of us love to even if we read it through, if we were to buy it through Libro and listen, or we were able to, read it on a Kindle Unlimited, there's these books that we wanna have on our shelves, right? Because they're personal to us or we're just obsessed with the cover, and I think yours is gonna be both, where it's a great story, but also it just looks so good, and you're gonna wanna have that displayed, so hopefully that's gonna be, you know I can't be the only person that buys something on Libra and then also buys the physical book and gets harassed by my kids being like, "You're never even gonna read that in physical form again." I'm like, "It's not your business. This is for my book."
No, you know what? There's no shame in that because, yes, 100% I will buy books, that I've read, like an ARC of
Yes,
or an ebook of, and I go get the finished copy. And then, there you'll get special edition covers
yes.
or recovers. And, there's a few books I have on my shelf that I probably have 5 or 6 copies of just because they all have different covers. And it's a beautiful problem to have.
It
I
is,
think that's the sign of a true reader. Like, give me 5 copies
exactly,
of this book.
exactly. I said, it could be drugs, it could be other things now, right? But,
There's
um
so many worse things it could be.
I'm like, "Listen, I'm a really big supporter, okay? If I buy it once, I'm gonna buy it twice, like, let me be." But, yeah, and then your other books too, I mean, I feel like so often I mean, I've said this before, and I know there's that old adage of, can't judge a book by its cover, but I just do feel like just from being in that bookstore over the weekend with the place at 90,000 books, I mean, as someone who reads a lot, I was struggling to find books in that because I just didn't feel like the covers were nothing called to me, nothing was, like, exciting, and then just thinking about how different things are now with the artistry and the textures, and like you said, like, I mean, it pulls people in a way that hopefully, from some of the things I was seeing over the weekend too, just the resurgence of reading and it has to have a factor into it. So I was just curious as to your thoughts.
The cover conversation is so interesting, and kind of you brought that up. I was scrolling through Instagram this morning, and I saw that Charlene Harris posted the Sookie Stackhouse series is getting
Yeah,
another cover. It's like, authors, especially, when you're earlier in your career or earlier in your books that are going out, especially in a series, you don't have a huge amount of say in what your covers are gonna look like. So I love that "don't judge a book by its cover" thing because, the cover the author may have gone a totally different direction, or they might feel that the cover doesn't represent the book or whatever, or just certain styles or certain colors are really popular for a while, and then we change. So there's so many different variables to consider, we know, when you're judging a book by its cover. But it's kind of hard not to, right? Because as a reader, you go into a bookstore and there's thousands of books looking at you, and you're looking for the one that you, like, have that meet cute moment, or, like, you might, make eyes across
absolutely,
the
right?
bay, and I'll go grab a book, and then I'll pick it up, and then I'll read the blurb, and, that will help me make a decision on if this is a book that's gonna, speak to me. But I do think that there's kind of a love at first sight thing that happens with covers, and I think it's human nature. We look for things that attract us, whether it's, sparkly betta fish or a fluffy stuffed animal or, just something. We're looking for that visual moment. And I think, a great book cover in its moment, will really grab a reader and bring it in. Whether, and then it's up to the blurb, to go the rest of the way to see if that's the right book for that reader. But you can't deny the power of a cover for sure. And I think Dollface has such a beautiful cover. And there's so many other books that I see out there that have beautiful covers, and I just grab them when I want to look at them. And there's many books I have bought for the cover and have not read. I definitely will
Thank
not
you. I'm
pretend
so
I'm
glad you
immune to
said
that.
that. It's it's good to know, it's good to know. Um, Now Dollface comes out the 24th of February, correct?
Yes, in the UK in February, I mean, sorry, in the US in February, and in the UK in March.
Okay,
Speaking of
great.
covers, because it's a
Yes,
totally different
yes.
cover for the UK version.
Okay, okay. I'm gonna look that up. Now, one of the things I've really enjoyed as we're promoting Dollface here before we get into some of the subject matter about it, is the mask that you've been putting on, which really kind of represents that. I don't know, maybe you could try to describe the mask. I was hoping, even though we're recording audio only, that you were wearing it as we're talking.
I am, what are you talking about? Now
I mean, it's an iconic mask that I feel like is, would you say, like, maybe 90s, 2000s of, like,
no.
Halloween
So
mask?
this mask, the mask that Dollface wears in the book, and the mask is the mask that I've been, putting on
Okay.
social media. It is the one and the same. It is, I think it's 1982, maybe
Okay,
1984.
because I was like, I feel like it has a 90s, like, but okay, 80s. That makes so much more sense because they have that, like, what is it? Super, it's like a whole cast of plastic and it's not rubbery, it just really sits on top of the face, but it's colorful and, you can't really see it's a great one to rob a bank with.
It's a great one to rob a bank with, yeah, and these are the Ben Cooper masks, and I completely nerd out in the book, about Ben Cooper, and then Clay McLeod Chapman one day informed me that they did a whole documentary on Ben Cooper and
What?
the Ben Cooper brand, and I cannot think what
Really?
it's called. I can phone a friend here and ask Clay, but yeah, this whole documentary on Ben Cooper because it was they kind of came out of nowhere. They built this entire empire of costuming, and they're cheap. I mean, like you said, they're just these little painted plastic shields with literally a rubber band around the back and, these kind of vinyl plastic costumes that go with them, and they had this huge heyday in the '80s, and then, you know, lots of Halloween candy hoaxes were happening, and other things were changing the kind of cultural landscape of Halloween in the US, and Ben Cooper kind of fell out of favor, and then all us '80s kids, I think, everything in horror has had kind of this renaissance lately from,
Mhm.
the cult fandoms of films and books and Ben Cooper masks, and so they're back. You can find them at Spirit Halloween coming soon, right in Halloween. But when I started writing Dollface, I knew, it's a slasher. One of the biggest slasher tropes is a mask of some type. So I wanted to find the best possible mask for Dollface. And I got to thinking about Ben Cooper, and I was a huge Barbie girl in my
Oh,
childhood.
yes,
Like, I just
yes,
had all
me
of them.
too,
And
me
I
too.
remembered this Barbie Ben Cooper costume I'd had, in the '80s at some point, and so I went on an eBay hunt, and I found her, and I bought her, and now she's here. I have the mask, which
That's
actually
amazing.
had a veil attached, similar to the what I talk about in the book, but I took the veil off because nobody's
Oh
got
my
time for that,
gosh.
and then, obviously, I'm not gonna fit into the dress 'cause it's sized for a toddler, but, we could try. But yeah,
Sure.
the real mask, and I think it's just I'm very method like that. Even with the Bless Your
Yes,
Heart series, I started an account with a mortuary supply store just so I could buy some, mortuary instruments to make sure
I
I
love
wrote
it.
them correctly. It's a weird thing that I do, but my collection has grown. But yeah, the Barbie Ben Cooper mask that Dollface wears is sitting in my closet right now looking at me. So
Amazing. I have heard so many people that we have interviewed that are like, "I am the research queen," and I believe them, and they go in, and it's amazing. And then we had Angela Sylvain on the other day was saying, like, "I literally did a spreadsheet showing how many tabs I mentioned something nostalgia, so I didn't overdo it." But you are the first person I have ever heard that have, like, created an account to do that is it just shows you this is why we need to have conversations like this and support authors like you because the amount of work that goes into putting a book together like this and all of your books is just we have no idea as readers, right? We read it as an experience, we enjoy it, but we don't know how much it goes on. And I'm so glad you shared that. And I think that's wonderful because to me, that full immersion, I work like that in my own way of like with my daytime job where I have to understand and know everything. I have to be able to fully teach on it and educate if as a salesperson, if I want to be able to sell it and use it and believe in it. And it's like I have to know the top to the bottom, the side, and do all my own research. But I've never done anything that fun. That encourages me to like now as an ADHD person to be like, how have I not been living my life like this, Lindy? Now I need to like I could be doing more. I could be doing so
yeah,
much more.
but there's a such thing as too much. So don't worry. You have to
No,
find that
no,
balance.
let's not go there yet. Wait till I hit the limit of that I haven't but that's fantastic, and, I could see, like, getting one of those maybe shadow boxes or something like that and framing that outfit with the mask. What do you something like that of putting it up on your wall instead of just in the
Gosh.
closet, maybe.
I do so much weird stuff. I mean, I'm a professor by day, so I think the research vein runs deep. I have to know how things work. I have to know the facts and the details, and that's where you find the weird stuff, right? The further you dig
Absolutely.
into something, you uncover this bizarre factoid. And that's a layer of texture in a story. In Dollface, I talk a lot about drumming and drummers and mental illness and neurodivergence and these other kind of things that all really work together. And as I'm doing all this research, I started researching Karen Carpenter, an incredible drummer and who had some family issues, kind of, similar to the issues that the protagonist has in Dollface. And then I discovered, of all things, they made a movie about Karen Carpenter, and I believe it was called Superstar, but they used Barbies to play the cast. And I thought,
What?
what is this beautiful weirdness
What?
going right in the book?
Wow. Yes.
And so, yeah, that's where you find those true weird nuggets of truth that are, truth is stranger than fiction sometimes. And in
Yes.
horror, like,
Yes.
let's just write them in real quick and cite your sources. I
Yes.
do. I'm so weird. I'm writing a short story right now and I cited my source because I put a statistic in there.
Actually really love that because, to me, it's like this I'm all about that because I just recently read Burn Down Master's House by Clay Kane, and it was a fiction story. It all throughout, you're finding his sources, and it was so I know it's a different style of book where you're but it was almost this hybrid of fiction and nonfiction, and for someone who when you're doing all this research and writing for even, for reading a hard book, I would love to have those sources because as you're talking about, like, the mask manufacturers and the style and the documentaries, like, of course, like, I would love to be able to immediately look that up, you know? To me, that's a style of book, make more. I will take all of those.
I think it would be excellent if, in the back of the book, in the back of a fiction novel, when you have those types of books,
Yes,
right? There's this kind of like, we'll see discussion guides for book clubs, and those are fantastic. But I almost want to have this like resource guide, like
yes,
want to learn more, but you want to start your own
yes,
funeral parlor here, right?
exactly.
But because
Would you like
it
a
keeps it
referral
going.
code to get onto my account?
Right, right. These are verified links, but,
Yeah,
I just think it's fun because I'm definitely one of those readers who keeps my phone next to me or a dictionary next to me or something. Because if I bumble into a word I don't know or into something that
yeah,
strikes me as there's truth here or where does this come from, I'm going to pick up my phone and look it up, and I love being able to find those things, and like I said, I think it adds a lot of texture and richness to a story, if
right.
you choose that adventure in your reading. Other times you just wanna read for fun, you don't wanna make it a project, I get it. But, the moments when, you wanna learn more about something, I think it's really fun to have that opportunity and that kind of search query, written out for you in the book so you can keep learning and
Absolutely,
discovering new things.
100%. I feel like after hearing so many horror authors say that they love research, I got to imagine the rest of the a lot of the horror reader community probably loves it too. So I almost feel like, that's our style, like for a lot of us. So I don't think it would go wasted in any way. But I will tell you from reading Dollface, now I've said many times, like I am a straight weenie about horror movies. I'm getting better, but that came from my evangelical upbringing of just like how naughty and evil and whatever, right? All the horror books, and I'm getting better. But reading Dollface, the amount of things that I learned about horror movies and horror tropes, I felt like I was, when you now mention like, "Oh, I'm a professor by day," I'm like, "Okay," because it kind of felt like you took me to school in, like, the best possible way of the way your female main character would just explain things to her husband or, "Well, actually, this makes sense," and it was very enjoyable.
Well, I'm glad you feel that way. Jill is very similar to me. I think she's the first character that I've written who's really kind of Lindy on paper, because that's definitely who I am. And I'm like, actually, do you know this? And I want to share all these weird knowledge things. And I think I have a theory. And my theory is that people who read horror, we're looking for information. We're looking to confront fears, to gather, data on what we would do. We're looking for information inside of our reads, I think, even in a, very subconscious or even very superficial level, but we're there for information. And what I've discovered being part of the horror community for so long is there are a lot of professors, teachers, researchers amongst us. I mean, I can name like 5 of us off the top of my
I'm
head who
telling
are in
you, it is
academia.
if you are not I feel like everyone is a teacher or has been a teacher
Or a therapist.
or a therapist,
Or
yeah.
therapists. Yeah, right? Like, there's so
Maybe a
much there, and
salesperson, that's, like, the other thing I've heard, but, like
Couple, but yeah.
and a librarian. I mean, it's like but most of them, I mean, there's a vast majority that are teachers.
We
and
just on
lawyers too.
how many we've entered like 10,
Oh, I
interviewed
think
like
it's
10
more than
authors
that.
that
Like,
yeah.
as Lindy was saying, like, there's so many I could think of off the top of my head
Mhm.
that just yes, exactly.
Yeah, so I think, when we're writing on the writer side, we're researching, 1, for correctness, because if you're gonna enucleate somebody's eyeball with an ice cream scooper, for example, you
Girl,
wanna
that
know
was
how that
so
works.
I was like, "I did not know that word. I need to look that up." I was trying to think of when you were saying that you sit with a dictionary, I was like, "What was that word in the book?" That's what it was,
That's
and it was
it.
disgusting. It was so
So
good.
gross. It's so gross and so fun at the same time, right? And I love it. Yeah, I spent a lot of time there was a book that came out, I think I was reading the arc while I was writing, but it's called Whack Job, and it's, like, the history of axe murder or something like that, but it's fantastic. It's a complete nonfiction book, and I've read, I think, everything Mary Roach has ever written, from
Are you
Stiff to
serious? You're
If.
not kidding. Like, when you brought her up in
No.
that, I was like, she's one of my favorite authors ever. I have every book she's written, and I got to meet her last summer.
Oh my gosh, I'm so very jealous. I fangirl over her all the time back in the days of Twitter when we were all still on Twitter. She and I
Yes.
had like a little brief conversation, and I'm over here like, oh my God, because
She
she's so smart and so accessible
is.
in her work. And
You kind of
yeah.
remind me of, like, your writing style or how you're so fascinated because that's really what I took away from her for when she did, like, the book reading for Replaceable You was it was just that She is so driven by curiosity. Like, that's how the goodness of everything that comes out of here is the curiosity, and I feel like that's what maybe makes your book so good as well is because you can't help but dig into, "Well, what about this? What about that?"
Yeah, I think, being curious is, that's what makes life fun, right? Learning things, discovering things, figuring stuff out, asking questions, and yeah, I'm curious to a fault. I'm also nosy to a fault, We'll just pretend
Let's
it's
find a
curiosity.
synonym, invested,
Right?
interested
Right?
to a
I am.
It was funny though, you were talking about how, the main character of Dollface was, like, the closest to you, and Rebecca was saying how, like, she took to school, but I found it funny because, like, I think that probably maybe of my generation and the people that will be reading this book discovered Scream probably in middle or high school.
Yes.
And we all very much saw ourselves in the character of Randy in Scream that were, like, horror fans, so I love how this kind of was like we always wanted Randy to be the main character, and now we get that kind of character as the main
Yes.
character here in the book, and I was like, I freaking love that.
I love it, and the timing couldn't be better. I mean, Scream came out in, what, '96, and here we are in 2026, and we're getting another one 30 years later, right? So,
Yep.
yeah, it works, and it captures you and keeps you interested and keeps further future generations coming back to the genre, coming back to those types of stories, and, nothing is more amazing to me than meta horror, horror that's very self-aware of itself and not afraid to, to call out references, to make those deep cuts or, to nerd out about Ben Cooper, right? I just think it's, that's what makes horror so much fun.
It's almost like, in a way, it breaks the fourth wall without, right?
Yeah, it's like it just kind of, like, rubs up gently against the fourth wall and,
You're
like,
like,
just
"Oh,
calms it
shit,
a little bit.
I think it's calling it out." Yes. Okay, so I got pretty excited about just getting right into this, but I would love for anyone who's listening if you would try to position Dollface as to what it's about and what a reader could expect because, we got right into the cover and how much I loved all these things, so I apologize. So let's go back and hear about what can they expect when they're getting Dollface?
If someone's an idiot and doesn't know what this book's about or not
Yes.
having
If
pre-ordered
they're
it.
not just interested in what the cover looks like by itself or so far of this conversation, what do they need to know?
As the author, I'm the worst person to ask, to explain the book. But, Dollface is, I guess, we call it Barbie meets Scream. It's about a horror author named Jill who moves with her family to the New Jersey suburbs and quickly finds herself embroiled in 2 terrifying things. 1, the elementary school PTA.
Amen.
2,
Absolutely.
a murderous slasher spree right there in her neighborhood that, seems to be targeting other women in the PTA, other moms in the area. And that's the story, but I think Dollface has a lot more to it in terms of the
Yes.
layers, right? There's a lot of conversations about mental health, about generational trauma, about performative motherhood, about the parking lots at Trader Joe's. There's just so much that goes in here,
Let me
to
tell
to
you,
be a
everything
story.
she wrote, I was like, "She's writing this book for me."
Is there anything worse than the parking lot at Trader Joe's?
No, the parking listen, you don't love Trader Joe's as much as me.
I love
No, not
getting
as much
inside
as
there,
me.
but it's such a
Yeah, but that's by design.
I
Like, it's part of
they hate you.
they only choose places like that.
Yeah,
It's part of, like, the allure, believe it
mhm.
or not.
It's like the safe
100%.
person
I
on
think
Seinfeld.
Trader Joe's are like, "Is this the parking lot impossible to navigate?" Yes,
I'm
check.
telling you, they have something about, like, it is part of their entire marketing plan of how they do things like that, and it's but it's worth it, okay? At the same time, I can never feel like I've ever seen every product in there because there's so many people with carts, and it's like,
Yeah.
excuse me, but do I return as often?" I'm like, we don't have a local Trader Joe's, I have to drive 30 miles one way or the other, and he's like, "This weekend," when we were trying to convince him what we wanted to do this weekend, and I was like, "Let's go here," and he's like, "But if we go up here, it's close to a Trader Joe's." I'm like, "You son of a
Right?
bitch, you
Mhm.
totally
Right?
got my." But he usually is like, "You spend too much money there," and I'm like, "I don't, I'm just a
But
really good
where
patron."
else am I gonna find chili lime cashews and,
Exactly.
like, the pumpkin latte spiced bow tie noodles? Like,
Yeah,
you're not gonna get that stuff
exactly.
anywhere else,
It
yeah.
is so good, and I gotta tell you, like, I'm 42, and I have just discovered their face creams and stuff there. If you guys haven't tried it, they have
Speaking of,
they have this
Mary
Yeah, they have this is adjacent to the book, yeah.
I know, I like it.
So, they had this wonderful, like, honey mask that is, like, looks and feels like honey, and you, like, rub it, emulsify it on your fingers, and then it's like a hydrating mask for winter, put on for, like, 10, 15 minutes, smells like honey, it feels so good, and I have, like, sensitive rosacea skin, and it doesn't bother me, and then when I was up there, I just got this, like, oil cleanser with colloidal oatmeal, which is also great, and anyway, I've spent a lot of money over the years trying to, like and spending, like, what is it, with the esthetician, and I just can't get over how nice the Trader Joe's products are. Like, they don't hurt my face, and they feel really good.
That's a vote. I mean, as women of a certain age, we have to be very careful with our skincare, and
Yes.
I spend a lot of time looking for the right skincare products too, so I'm into it. The next time I go to Trader Joe's and hunt down all the random weird things I can only get there, I'll add
Yes.
honey face masks to my list. I travel, a lot, and we always get like the Trader Joe's like bathroom spray,
Right.
and those types of little products. My dog or my previous service dog who passed away in November, he loved some of the treats from Trader Joe's. So there's something for everyone in
It
Trader
really
Joe's.
is. Look, I got a previous boss of mine really safe, clean salmon dog treats for his dog for a Christmas present. Like, they really do have the quality.
They really do. I know. Great name. It's Trader Joe's. If you want to talk about sponsorship, I'm here. My contact
Yes,
information's on my
exactly.
website, right?
But
Oh,
but I feel like this is when we talk about the layers in this book, it is you're right. It is that on the top, and it's the PTO, PTA. I mean, it's that's something that every time people would be like, "She's a mom." I'm like, "What does that even mean? Don't lump me." Like, I don't know what you're saying. I don't know why you're saying that, but I don't like the tone and whatever intonation. And it's what I realized over the years is it's like this trad wifey type mom that goes to these PTA, PTO, and that is not me. I'm not interested in that. And so I just feel like you writing about this right now is this resurgence of almost kind of like community perfect moms that have all these things. It's great that you're not that I was happy that any of them died because they weren't terrible, but it wasn't awful to watch them have moments, you know?
I mean, to be fair, I think only one of them died, right?
yeah, that's
So
what I was gonna say, yeah.
Right. I was like, I'm trying to not spoil
the
it for the
rest were
reader.
you know?
Okay, yes, okay.
But I
You can
mean,
still live
yeah,
without an eyeball.
yeah, it's you still have one. No, you got two. It's fine. But no, I think, and there's a difference, I think, between like a mom and a PTA mom, right? Like those are
Lord,
two
yes.
different moms. And I was a PTA mom, or I was a mom on the PTA, I should say, from the time my son was in kindergarten all the way through all the way through high school. And now that he's a student coming into the university I teach for, I still feel this weird over attachment. But even for women who don't have children, or for men who aren't on the PTA or to have children, whatever, we've all been in that group of friends, the mean girls group.
Right.
Whether they're your PTA, whether they're like the popular kids' lunch table in high school girls, like we all have experienced that kind of group of people and had to navigate those turbulent waters of complicated female friendships, right? So, it's not just PTA moms, it's just mean girls. It's the way women
It
treat
is.
each other and when they're supposed to be on the same team.
I never and I was, like, so dumb and naive, because I just always think the best of everyone, and my older daughter, I had volunteered she did a lot of stuff with musical, and she's 23 now, but I so this would have been when she was, like they started early, like 8th grade, ninth grade, and I was like, "Oh, I'll go in and help with, like, the makeup and help the team," and they were doing, what was that?
Adam's Family?
Yes, and the level of, like, perfectionism that these people were expecting and how they did all these pictures ahead of time with maybe that's normal, but I was like, "Wow, I did not know I was getting myself into here,"
A
of
Broadway
pretty
production.
much. And I mean, it was fun, but it was like
The passive aggressiveness at
yeah, and I
things,
think
yeah.
almost like the vicariousness of living through, like, thinking like you were something special,
Mm.
and it's like,
Yes.
we're not the act here, it's the kids." I don't know.
Right, yeah. No, I mean, I'm just shaking my head being like, "Mhm, mhm, mhm." I mean, there's a reason reality shows like Dance Moms, etcetera,
Right.
exist, right?
Okay,
Like
you're
yeah.
nailing it. That's what I was surprised. I was very like, "Okay, I really thought we were here to support kids and do some creativity, but okay, I was mistaken."
No, 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 we are here to live out Brenda's childhood fantasy of
Exactly,
being a
exactly,
Rockette or something.
apparently, so but Adam, I'm sorry, I know you had a question, I apologize.
Well, I just sorry, it was from way back. I was just wondering, like, it's interesting, and I wanna talk a little bit more about anthologies a little bit later, but do you find it easier to talk about anthologies that you've edited instead of, like, novels that you've written? Because it's, like, more like a group kinda thing? When in terms of, like, explaining kinda what it's about, obviously it's different stories, but when someone's like, "Oh, what's Howl?" Are you like, "Oh, I can tell you all about that," and then with your own novel, it's like, "Why'd you ask me that?"
Well, I think it's 2 different conversations, right? Because when
Yeah.
it's your own novel, you can talk from, like, this really informed kind of place about the book and the research and the messaging and whatever, and when I get to talk about anthologies, I just go into full-on fangirl. I mean, the contributors I get to work with when I'm editing an anthology is the best part. Like, I get to work with some of my favorite authors and with some great friends or with people I meet, out at, new authors that I met at a book event or something. And you get to work with this kind of community to build something great together. Even though anthology editing is usually kind of like the editor and a contributor one on one, you don't usually do things as a group, but there's still this like tribal project where you get to build and create something together. And so it becomes very celebratory, I think. And novels are too, but it becomes like, oh my gosh, I'm talking too much about myself or, whatever.
Yeah.
It makes you feel a little bit different, but I will gush about anthologies and contributors and those projects all day because I think anthologies are the gateway drug to horror, right? You get to experiment with different voices, different writing, different types of stories, and you get to do them in this really curated environment. And my hope is always that a reader will pick up an anthology and discover, recognize a few names and then discover several more and go and read those authors too and expand their bookshelves. So yeah, anthologies are fantastic. Definite place for both.
I just wanna pop, in real quick and say that between Mother's Knows Best, Darkest Night, and Howl, I think you have, like, 3 of the top 10 anthologies of the decade. Like, those 3 are just, like, if you wanna know how good an anthology can be, pick up any of those 3, and they're perfect, like, from beginning to end. Every time I'm like, "How is every story in this good?"
They
Or
are, they're so
when
good, right? I mean,
I see your
yeah.
name on an anthology, I know it's gonna be one of the best.
Well, Adam, I have to tell you, keep your eye on social media because there will be a new anthology announcement dropping literally any day. So, a new one coming. And I'm very excited about it. It's the biggest one I've ever done, and I cannot wait to scream about it. But for now, I must hold my tongue until Publishers Marketplace gives me the green light.
Awesome, I cannot wait, and congratulations in advance, and I swear we had no idea when I said that.
Yeah, yeah, he's also not sponsored by no. It's funny that you asked that question though, Adam, because I find that happens a lot when, I've seen myself at a farmer's market and I've been out with, "Oh, you could buy this and you could get this and you could make this meal." It's like, "Oh, well, what are you getting?" It's like, "How do I know what I wanna eat? I don't know. I don't know what I'm getting." Like,
Mhm.
I feel like that's kind of the question of you're saying, like, "How do I describe my own book?" But I can
Yeah.
chalk up everyone else's where it's like, "Oh, you should get this, you should buy this." Well, what are you getting?
Mhm.
I don't know. I have no idea. It's like everything goes blank out of
Yes.
my head.
Yeah,
Um,
anthologies are the charcuterie boards of the genre, right? You can just sample a little bit of everything.
Little cheese, one
one
little
little
olive,
cheese,
A
except then
little
there's always the
cheese, a
people
little
like Adam
cracker.
who's just gonna eat all the cheese
That's
that you
true.
wanted at first.
Exactly. Well, we're talking to Gwendolyn Kais coming up soon, and her story and Howl, I swear, is like I just think about it all the time, like, it's so good, but,
Hear you
very
muttering about it
excited.
in your sleep.
End of the world.
Well, so I feel like this was such a to your point, I really wanna talk about the mental illness part a little bit of this because
Yeah.
I remember when I first started the book, I was kinda like, "Ooh, I don't know if I can read this a little bit because it starts off with, like, a little bit of a trigger warning of the bird. I don't know if you wanna say that or not, but for me, I was like, "I don't know if I can read about this because, like I said, I'm a baby." But then after it gets past that, I felt just so immersed into the relationship with the
Mm,
sisters, the almost like you're creating this, I don't wanna say codependency because they don't live together, but they've been through some shit, and you can tell that, and even though they don't live right next to each other, and then talking about just moving around, it was like being with a military family that just changes a lot. Um, there was a lot of things that you could see just pull on those, and then her saying like, "Okay, I have to write this book. I have to get this out." And I just felt like there was lots of layers of things that you could talk about with stress, supporting a family member, having the childhood that you had growing up, knowing it wasn't good, but you're working hard for these things, and even they went through some foster care. So you really have some depth to this story that you could definitely look through the horror lens of healing.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack, really and truly. And I have to tell you, the prologue or chapter 0 with the bird, was very, very, very much based on a true story from my own life. I say very, very,
Interesting.
very. I had a bird. I no longer have the bird. And, I didn't have a little sister, but I have a little brother. And
Okay.
my mother sold Mary Kay growing up. So there's a lot who my mother who is still with us. In fact, she lives with me right now. All of those things were very true. So I took a real traumatic moment from my childhood and kind of my mother was very furious with me when she read the first draft of that chapter. But I had written a short story a million years ago called Toodles is Dead, which was kind of what is now that chapter, where I had kind of written about this. And yeah, my mom was rather furious.
That's amazing, though. I
So
mean, was
it is
that
amazing.
cathartic to I mean, it definitely sets the tone, I think, and without that chapter, I don't think the book would be what it is. You have to have it.
Y Yeah, it's a cold open for the book. I mean, it sets up so much of what happens or the way that Jill reacts and
Right.
responds and the way that Kitty reacts and responds, all the way through the book is very much driven by those kind of seeds that were planted back in 1998 and in the start of the book, and they go through.
Yes.
I don't talk a lot about I don't call it out very specifically, but I've seen some really savvy readers in reviews talk about, Jill must be neurodivergent. And I'd say that, Jill is very much like me. She is riddled with anxiety and OCD and ADHD, and she has to function through all of those while trying to fit into this very cookie cutter mold of, a normal suburban mom. Meanwhile, she has a little sister who obviously has some issues of her own that she's working through. And then they're both joined by this childhood trauma that has, bled all over their adult lives. Jill's in her late 30s and Kitty's right about 30 in the book. So, those things that happen to us that make us who we are in our childhood, they stay and they become part of our personalities and our habits as we get older, for better or worse. And we have to learn to navigate them or we have to learn to address them. And I think all that is really here. And, some of the other women characters in the book, have bring their own things into this story too. So, my goal was to put these kind of, conversations on the page without putting a flag on them. Like I want readers to see themselves or see people they know and kind of think about how those influences or those experiences shape and motivate and drive a person or a character, and to feel relatable and to feel seen, when you feel like you're other or you're the odd
Right.
girl out.
Right. I love that you said that because I was thinking that she was neurodivergent, and to say that because for the varied interests and the different things that this character is showing and doing. But I also feel like without saying the word specifically of like a CPTSD, a chronic, it's like she
Mhm.
has that, but she's still able to mask so well and keep her shit together, despite there being this undercurrent, and even though she knows she's lived it and her sister knows they've lived it, but if you look from outside looking in, they look like they are, she's the successful things, but it's like she still has this deep history. And you're right, like it has to color through the life of just going through things.
Yeah, and I think, that's another layer to horror in the suburbs, right? You don't know what goes on behind closed doors, and that includes somebody's home or it includes the mask they wear out in public. It doesn't have to be a Ben Cooper doll face Halloween mask. It can be just your actual face that you turn out and go out in public. You're still using that as a shield to cover up your what you perceive as your flaws or your inadequacies or your problems or whatever. And we can't, you can't judge a book by its cover, you can't judge a house by its cover, you can't judge a person by their cover. And so I wanted to kind of get into that a little bit about the performative aspects of just being a person and going out and doing, living your life and going through your world. And, you're perceived, like Jill, like you mentioned, perceived as this very successful kind of author. They live in a great affluent neighborhood in the suburbs. Things are going well. They've got, the husband in the military, the young son, the dog, the nice house, everything. But underneath that, you've got a woman who's riddled with anxiety and stress, who's dealing with a problematic family, who's having to kind of navigate all of that together. And that's everybody. Everybody has those two, that duality. Of who we present ourselves as and who we are when we're alone with ourselves. So I think it's important to recognize that and to know that we're all like that, and that's okay. And it's okay to be vulnerable sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love that richness of we're talking about the character or the killer wearing a mask, but also how the main character wears a mask. So again, we're just really getting into I love how you've struck the chord for both of those. It is as superficial as you want it to be or as deep in that level of healing as you want it to be too.
Yeah, and I think that's what to me makes fiction so transformative, right? It can be just a great book that's fun to read, and it can have, it can be an onion with layers to peel back and explore. And it's the reader's decision which path they want to choose. Want to read a book for fun, want to read a book for, a little bit deeper canvassing. You can do either or, you can do both. You can read a book more than once and take a couple of different spins through it.
Definitely.
And there's definitely books that I've read. I mean, one of my favorite books of all time is Wally Lamb's She's Come Undone, which is not a horror book, but as a young woman growing up in those conditions that the main character grows up in that book, like,
I'm
it's
not
full
laughing
of
at you.
horror.
I promise I'll tell you why I'm laughing here in a minute. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, no, like, that's the end of it, but, I mean, I think you can find that, that experience into a book the first time you read it, the 5th time you read it, it's up to you.
Absolutely. Okay, Adam,
So
tell you can tell why we're laughing.
so Mary Roach, obviously, we she said is one of her favorite, but Wally Lamb, his book last year, River is Waiting, was one of Rebecca's, like, 3 books of the year too. So when you brought that up, I'm just like, "Oh my god, you guys
Oh
are the
my
same
gosh.
person."
We
That's
are
not
the same
that's not
person
why I'm
because
Why
laughing,
are you
though.
laughing?
I'm laughing because my next door neighbor, who is a big reader
Yes.
as well,
So yeah,
and I
gave us that book to
know
read,
that
but she did. Yeah.
she gave
Mhm.
us the one you just
Yeah.
mentioned, Lindy, that She's Come
oh, that
Undone.
She's Come Undone.
Yes, and
Listen,
she told me at a party where it was, a summertime party, a lot of drinking, but probably 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
I've read this book, She's
Yes.
Come Undone. I've read it 4 times in my life.
Different
I've
times in
read
my
it at
life.
4 different times, and
Yes.
each time it has made me cry, and it's amazing, and so I've told Ashley, like, I literally have it on my shelves waiting to be read because I'm always, like, reading
So
other
this is a
things.
sign,
It is a
obviously.
sign is what I'm saying. Like, I have to push forward now, Lindy, and then I'll private message you and let you know how it is, but genuinely, Ashley, my neighbor, was saying, like, it is what she kept telling, 4 at the 4 different times she's read it at 4 different sections, so I'm laughing of, like, the fact that you're like, "This is one of the best
Yeah,
books." I'm
clearly.
like, "Okay, it is." I mean, he's just an amazing author, but the
Yes.
fact
I
that
have
okay,
so much to say about this. Yeah, it's amazing because, that book was an Oprah book. Let me just
Yes.
sorry, I'm gonna have to nerd out for just a second.
What was it? I
don't
That
know
book
this book
was
is
a
apologize.
true too. That's a brilliant book.
it was an Oprah's book club pick back in, like, the mid-90s when it came out, and, Wally, by the way, is a professor, so just
Okay.
another academic in the bunch, and that book came out, and I read it probably for the first time when I was 12. I took a brief break from Dean Koontz and Stephen King and Anne Rice to read Wally Lamb, and like I said, it's not a horror book. I guess it's probably women's fiction or something, but it there's some horror moments in there, especially if you are a young woman growing up. I mean, she goes through a lot, Dolores, the main character. But I read it then, and then probably, like I said, I was at 12, and the book follows Dolores from when she's like 4 all the way to in her 40s or maybe 50s. So I probably need to do one more read to really like get to the end of our story together. Because at this point, I feel like Dolores and I have like a history,
My god, that's amazing.
but you go through it, read it, and what's hysterical is Wally Lamb is one of my favorite authors. I mean, outside of the horror space, I love all of his work. I have not read The River is Waiting. It is on my Kindle, but as you said, things just kind of pile ahead of it. But I was at the Columbus Book Festival this past summer, and Wally Lamb was, like, the main headlining author. And I'm there doing like 3 or 4 panels and 2 signings, and all I wanna do is find Wally Lamb in the crowd, like and I did not, so it remains, like, one of my deepest regrets. It was so busy, but, I mean, it's amazing, and that was one of 2 books I've read in my whole life where I truly could not believe that it had been written by a male author, because I found the way that I continuously find the way he writes Dolores and her mother and her grandmother, the characters in this book to be so incredibly enlightened. I just simply couldn't believe it. The second book, for what it's worth, that I could not believe was written by a man was Mary by Nat Cassidy.
But,
He did an amazing job with that.
Amazing job, and I read Mary before I knew Nat, so I went in thinking Nat was like a Natalie, maybe, and I got to the end, and he writes this big afterword in the book talking about it, and I was just like, "No kidding," and now I'm very pleased to say Nat Cassidy is one of the most amazing people on this planet, and very dear friend, and very lucky
Absolutely.
to have him as a friend. But those are the 2 books I think that I would definitely say really write a female experience from a position of such compassion and empathy, but also, like, really enlightened perspective.
I think the
Yeah.
third one I would add to that just in terms of, is The Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by
Yes, by
Grady.
Grady
The
Hendrix,
birthing
right?
scenes, like, the actual giving birth and the pregnancy and those horrors, that was surprising to me quite a bit, but I will have to read that by Wally Lamb. We can flip-flop. I will tell you that it is to me, it's labeled as literary fiction, but it's horrific.
mhm.
The entire book of The River is Waiting, and I
There
loved it.
needs to be, like, a new
There needs to be a hybrid,
subgenre of
yeah,
realistic horror. I don't know.
I'm telling you what,
But,
exactly.
um, I wanna say before I, go to the next thing that Nat's story in your anthology, Darkest Night, we read at Christmas every like, I need a little doll of that elf, like, it's one of the greatest things.
That's the one?
Yes, that's
Nice
in
is
her
his
anthology,
story,
At
yes.
yeah.
one point, you were reading it to someone, and the person Adam was, like, so excited to read it to him, and I was like, You gotta stop. You gotta stop," because
When we got to the tree,
it
the
was
ornaments on the
it was
tree.
horrifying them so much, and I was like, "No, no, no, they're not having fun, they're not having fun." Like, it's but
You
it
know,
is one of the best. It was an
Now
excellent story.
but I wanted
it
to
was
say,
a
like,
great
when it
one.
comes Dollface, one thing that really interests me now, it wasn't like I read this a while ago, but I was thinking about it again that we were gonna talk to you, especially starting like 2026, there's this weird sort of like we have to go about daily life and we're going to the grocery store and we're dropping kids off and going to work. But there's this like dread and this just weird feeling of like awful things could happen at any time, you know, sort of atmosphere in the country right now, right? And I feel like the way that you kind of explore that in this book, like in a much more personal way, there's something very specific happening to these people, but they still have to plan the Halloween party at school. They still have to, drop the kids off. They still have to write this book. And I think you capture that so well of like, because at some point you think, wouldn't you just go like, if you think you're really in danger, wouldn't you just leave? Or why would you go to this party? Or why would you do this? And it's like, that's not how life works, right?
See,
You have to do it.
I felt like I
Like,
took that a different way, and it
oh,
was more like I felt like they were such suburban ostriches
well,
head in
Jill,
the sand. I know, well, Jill knows, but,
that's
like,
what I mean. Like her
yes,
character
okay, fair,
specifically.
but I was like, I understand. Okay, let me let Lindy answer, I apologize.
No, I think you're both completely correct. I think it was funny because I wrote Dollface between Bless Your Heart and Another Fine Mess. So, even though Another Fine Mess came out first, so I wrote the original draft of Dollface in, like, I don't know, 2023, 2024, and then 2025 was just sucked so much ass that
Yeah.
I wrote it again thinking, like, I kinda did a bunch of editing and rewriting and, changing some things as you do through the process, and I thought 2026 surely is gonna be a better year than 2025, and I was wrong. But I think, going into you're right, though. I mean, there's nothing like, every time I go out my door, I feel like it's a horror show. Like, I'm leaving the safe little nest of my house, and I'm going out into the wide world, and who knows what I'm gonna see, what I'm gonna experience, what I'm gonna read on the news that evening. But you still have to go through, you still have to live, smile, write the book, literally, cook dinner for the kid. wash your hair, right? You still have to continue on. But to Rebecca's point, like in the suburbs, it's very much ostriching in the sand. We don't think, that the things we read on the news, they feel so far away and not in our own backyards. And we can't really I don't wanna say, like, acknowledge them, but we don't really experience them the same even when they're a city over, a state over. It just feels so far away. So there's kinda that reminder that, like, these terrible things can happen anytime, anywhere, and you have to keep going, you have to keep living, but you also have to be aware and responsive to what's going on in the world around you. And again, it's that duality thing, right? You gotta
Absolutely,
do
and Adam, I
both.
think with you having significant anxiety the way that this character does, you are always on that hyper alert, so I
Yeah,
feel like I understand why that completely resonates for you of, "Okay, this could be happening," and, you're always so smart about that stuff, and then at the same time, I feel like we live in this small rural area where the news doesn't mean really shit to anybody because it's like, it's never gonna happen here. It's never gonna intersect in my life, it's like, why are we even talking about things? I mean, the announcement today of, "Okay, we're just gonna move on. We're not gonna have any more." It's like, I think it'll be perfectly fine in this community for a lot of people, and because they have bigger things to plan and to look at, and I don't know if that's an unwillingness, I think that's a training, but it's also just a privilege that these things can happen. I do find that a lot of times where it's like I gotta jump on my Teams meeting in the morning and it's like, "How was your weekend?" It's like, "It was great. I was so," and you're like, "I can't even be myself. I can't
mhm.
even tell," and, obviously it's corporate life, you're not supposed to, but
That's becoming more and more of a
it's very hard. It
disassociation that
is,
you
it's
have to do.
completely it's like I have to be an alter ego or something, in order to participate.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the right word, disassociation, right? And that goes right back to what we were talking about earlier with the masks you put on just to get through your everyday life. I mean, the end of 2025 in my personal life was the worst few months I think I've ever experienced. And I've talked a little about it publicly. My service dog passed away very, very suddenly on top of November. Anybody who's ever met me and probably met my dog because he was, my service dog with
I'm
me
so
100% of the
sorry.
time. Thank you. And horrible and tragic, and I'm not over it. And as somebody with, CPTSD and OCD and anxiety, not having that companion with me is a daily distressor to my mental health. I am getting a new puppy in
Good,
April. So I'll be
good.
spending the summer at home. Luckily, I'm not on tour, so spend the summer at home doing training with him. My stepfather passed away on Christmas Day, so you know all
That's
of these really
that's
horrible
very hard.
things
Yeah,
happened, back to back, and yet we still have to smile. We still have to go to Christmas parties. We still have to do interviews. You
right.
have to keep living your life even when you're carrying these burdens with you. Everyone has their own battles and their own struggles, so you can't compare or compete. But we all have to disassociate. I spent the COVID era. I was living in Alaska, so I was on this like island, not island, way far away from the rest of the country. So what the rest of the world was going through was not at all my experience.
Wow.
And then I came back to the States and I was like, holy crap, like I had no idea this was going on. Yeah, I saw it on social media, but it doesn't hit because you're, out floating on an island somewhere. And again, I know Alaska's not an island, but for all
Right, right.
intents and purposes, that can be so close and yet so far.
There's, I think, a level of protection that your brain does for some of those things too, but at the same time, I think thank God for some of the horrific things that we've gone through that there is structure to pull yourself out of depression or there's times where it's like, okay, it's okay to what did my therapist say? It's okay to isolate to recharge, but it's not okay to just like permanently isolate. And it's like I have to watch myself for that of like, wanting to just completely isolate. So I mean, sometimes I'm grateful for those uh moments that are so banal and normal that I need those, as just something to get friction with to pull myself out of the hole, as someone who struggles more on that end. Uh, I guess maybe not because now that I'm getting older, my doctor was like, "Oh yeah, anxiety spikes in your late 30s, early 40s." I was like, "You don't say," because I don't really feel like I deal with the depression so much anymore. I think we're good on that. I think
Thanks
it's.
for telling me
I
about
was
that.
like,
Thanks for the
okay,
warning, guys.
yeah, but
I love
I mean,
it.
that's
Yeah.
the thing is, like, you start to find more comfort, and, like, before we started the call here, I was saying, like, "No, I'd like to go into my" what I say, "swamp hag," or we said the, like,
Yeah.
mode of
Swamp
I
Wish.
like to be
Yeah.
in the pajamas and just, come down, like, I like to, just I know the things that work for comfort now, and you know, just
Eh,
balancing it all. But yeah, I wanted to make sure that we chatted a little bit because I can remember the first time I ever heard your name. Adam has been was a fan of yours like well before, because I wasn't really sure that I was a horror reader. Like I said, I
Mhm.
would read all this horrific stuff in literature, but
Yeah, I'm an almost embarrassingly huge fan of yours, I'm not
yeah,
quite shy.
seriously. And I just
kids are
remember
so
we went
sweet.
to a few different bookstores. It's like, I gotta see if they have the new Lindy Ryan out. I gotta see if they have the new.
'Cause I'd read it, but I needed it, and
I
I
know.
wanted to get it in the wild,
Look,
so I
we
didn't
already
wanna have
had
to
this
order
conversation,
yeah.
and I appreciate that.
Mm,
But I read
bless your heart, yeah,
well, I was gonna say the Evans ladies, is what I was gonna say, women. I got it through Libby, even though we had it here at the house
in
because
multiple different
I know,
mm,
because I could, I could transport it with me easier for the things I was doing at that time. But I fell in love. I mean, these women are so freaking awesome and so smart, and like the generations, and just witty, and it made me want to be like, god, I want to be a part of the Evans family.
oh, yeah.
And then I really had my feelings deeply hurt at the end of the book.
You don't play around.
No, it was
In either
like
of those books, you don't
I
play
was
around.
thinking, what the fuck just happened here? No, this can't be done. Yes, that
Damn it,
happened.
Lindy.
Okay.
Yeah,
I was
yeah, yeah.
very disrupted. So in juxtaposition with Face, I did not feel like you massacred my heart.
You sure?
No, it
Okay.
wasn't the same way.
It wasn't yeah, so, okay, and you haven't read Another Fine Mess yet,
No.
but I'll have to tell you, I
Okay.
read the dance scene, like, minutes before my students walked in the morning, and
What does that mean?
truly have not struggled to get myself together like
Were
that.
you crying?
I was and I'm not gonna lie, I am not a fan of "Kiss Me" by Sixpence None the Richer, that
I
song,
hate that song.
but
Now
after
you think of it.
I hear that song and I'm about to start crying all
Oh
over again because 'cause
no!
In a good way, Adam. Those are happy, bittersweet tears.
now
Yeah.
melancholy is my favorite of all emotions, and that's
Okay.
certainly what's happening
Melancholy
there, but
tears.
yes,
Oh,
like, when I think of, like, a perfect sequel, Another Fine Mess is a perfect sequel. That is exactly what you want from a continuation of characters you love. You do, like, and perfect that you bring this up because it comes out in paperback the same day that Dollface comes out,
it
right?
does. Yes, yes, it does.
So, get that double feature and, like,
Well,
you
I feel like
will
I've been kind of I wanted to have Dollface read before we talked to Lindy,
mhm.
but I will tell you I'm genuinely dragging my feet to read another,
Yeah,
yes, because I don't want it to end.
and
So I need to
so,
know,
yeah.
what is something coming out after that, because I love that world so much.
So there is a 3rd book, in
Thank
that
God.
series that will kind of wrap everything up. So I
Good.
know I did you dirty at the end of Bless Your Heart.
Well, we need a Snooki Stackhouse style series, okay?
Yeah,
I have about 5 and a spinoff in my brain,
yes.
Okay,
so
excellent.
we'll see what happens. I would love to do it because I have this idea about, I wanna finish the trilogy as it is, and then I have an idea for a spinoff, when Luna is an adult,
Amazing.
and kinda pick up with Luna in today, because, the Bless Your Heart series is so incredibly special to me, and because it's based so much off of my own family members. I
Oh
mean,
my gosh, they sound wonderful then.
my
Wow.
great-grandmother was Ducey, that was literally her name, and that was who she was. My
She's a
grandmother
spitfire.
was just as kind of cold and frigid, but genuinely, like, kind and loving as Lenore. My mother's nickname is Grace. It is because she is extremely clumsy. A little bit of a family joke, but she's here. And then, Luna is kind of a teenage Lindy, and I definitely pick on myself a lot as Luna, a character. But I knew I wanted to write this intergenerational story of women who had to, deal with this very double-sided obligation, and the balance between keeping a secret and doing a service, and that's kind of where the Evans exist. And the first, since you haven't read the sequel, the first book really goes into the world they're living in and the dynamics between them, and then we have some huge consequences because we realize as we're going through the book that they don't know nearly as much as they thought they knew, and that kind of leads to the climax of Bless Your Heart and everything that happens then, but it also kicks off the sequel because all those things they didn't know, right? They kind of come back around, and so we go on yet another adventure with the Evans women, and I think you'll forgive me for some of the choices at the end of the book when you get into the second book, and then you'll hate me all over again for the end of the second book.
Great,
But
great.
the 3rd book, I really wanna go back into, why do they live in this town? Like, what is the root of what they're dealing with? And how did the very first Evans woman, Ducey's mother, Pie, how did she get involved in this? And,
Okay, that'll be
you know,
great.
so there's a lot going on there, and then I have this crazy idea to write a horror romance of Grace and Evans and Sam's story
Yes,
Amazing.
because
that would be so good.
I think that's the horror romance we need in our lives
Yes, these
right
are
now, so
like Anne Rice style, like, spin-offs from the main story. I freaking
I
love
love
exactly,
it
it's the
because
Vampire
I
Chronicles and the
genuinely was like,
new
"How did this
vampires.
happen? I wanna know."
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, and, one of the good one of the I guess we could say the silver linings to the crappy end of 2025 is I relocated temporarily back to my, Texan hometown, and I'm right here in the ground zero of the Evans women, so I get to visit the historic societies here and the landmarks and stuff here and do all that lovely research we talked about, so
Well, one
to
of the
make
things
sure that their book gets done.
yeah,
Yes.
I just wanna say for anyone that hasn't read your books, you have a writing style that I think as a reader, if you didn't think you were a reader or you couldn't be engaged as a reader or just your books hold the attention from the start. I don't know how you do that, but there's this level of it's like I used to say on some of our podcasts that I would have to just like prepare myself to try to read 50 pages in until I could get sucked into. And I didn't feel like that with either of your books. It's almost like it's sinking into the most comfortable pair of like I don't know what to, but it's like but I'm like so comfortable but I'm so excited and I'm so engaged and it's like it's
It's
just
like
this
getting told the best story.
it is
Like,
and it's like
yeah,
what you think that everyone's like, "Oh man, I read a lot." It's like, "What the hell do you enjoy about it?" It's like that's
yeah.
what your books bring to me. It's like they're just they feel so good. They really do.
Thank you. That makes me so happy because, I'm a huge reader. I'm definitely one of those kids that was reading books they shouldn't have been reading at a very young age and voraciously reading. And I love feeling that magic of getting into a book that you just can't stop reading, right? And the one that you're sad when it's over and you miss the characters. And so you read it again or find a sequel or whatever. Those are my favorite types of books to read, and so that's the kind of books I wanna be able to give to other readers, and so that means a lot to me. Thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
love, like, one thing that I can say between the 2 Evans women, Dollface and even Cold Snap. Not that there isn't good and evil, but everything is good and evil, right? Like, nothing in all of these books, nothing is just black and white. Everyone has these different sides. Like, the people that you think are
The
just
morally
completely
gray.
evil are not just completely evil, and the people that you think are just completely good aren't either. And I love how, like, you can do that in a way that is not depressing. It's still really fun and
That's
entertaining,
it.
but, like, it is also complex if you're looking for that and thinking about that, you know?
Yeah, I don't think people are ever one thing. One of my favorite characters to write in the Bless Your Heart book, and in the first book specifically, was Sheriff Buck Johnson,
Yeah.
who's
Yeah.
this drunk old curmudgeon, hateful bigot. But he loved his dog, right? And he loved Ducey even,
There's always, like,
and
some redeemable
some
portion
Humanity.
redeeming
yes,
Yeah.
quality.
about that, yes, and you struck that of just, like I didn't walk away disliking him, I think because of his amount of how much he loved Ducey.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, because I really wanted his death to mean something, when he although that was also a very fun scene to write. Every scene with Buck Johnson in Bless Your Heart was, like, my top favorite scenes. I just loved that character because he was just so unabashedly an asshole, but
He is so
also,
aptly
like,
named, like, Buck. I mean,
Yeah.
just
Buck,
like
you
you know
know?
Buck
exactly
Johnson.
who you're dealing with a
Yep.
Buck Johnson,
You know
yes.
exactly who this guy is, and I just loved writing a character that had such, like, strong polarities in who he was, and you kind of even see it with Ducey, like, she's this little spitfire, and she definitely can be cantankerous and argumentative and just brass where you're like, "Oh my god, Ducey," and then she'll drop some wisdom and your heart swells full and sweet like, like butterscotch, so I really love to give people layers. The butters you guys know I have no idea how much butterscotch I eat when I'm writing those books. I'm
You
just
know
sitting
what?
here.
I had a
Wait a minute,
friend.
hold on.
Okay.
Butterscotch is like a that's the other part I love, is like a staple of my early childhood, like 4 or 5 years old, but every time my mom would go to the grocery store, we would always get Brock's butterscotch,
Yes.
and
Mhm.
I don't think that there's a better brand, and I just when other times I'm like, "It's not buttery enough to be butterscotch if it's not Brock's."
Right, yeah, I have a weird tick, I think, when I'm in all of my books, I have to mention a few things a certain time or a certain way. I always have to mention, like, some delicious sweet food. I always have to mention a market basket grocery store. I always have to mention there's a couple of other things I just feel the need
I'm
to
gonna have to
drop
think
in
about
there.
that now. I
Mhm.
really am.
It's like a little Easter egg hunt. It makes me happy. Vanna White somehow appears in everything I write.
So you do eat a lot of those, like a lot of
Pride
butterscotches
of
you're
North Myrtle Beach, Vanna White.
Pride of North, and I have a place there, so I'm there all the time. Literally,
Okay, are you being
when you
serious
do
right now? We
I
we al
am.
We
we
would go
almost
there all the
moved.
time, and we love that the sign says,
Yes,
The
we
sign.
literally
"Home of
almost
Vanna White."
moved to North Myrtle Beach. We love the ocean, God, we haven't been there in so long.
I know.
She went down there. Vanna
Windy
was
Hill,
down
that's our
there maybe,
section.
like she was down there maybe 2 summers ago. She did a tour. It was on Wheel, and they did a tour of all of her favorite places to go in North Myrtle Beach. So, of course, I'm the lunatic out there, like, driving around like, "Do you see the bus? Do you see her?" Because I
Oh
thought it
my
would be the
god,
most
I
amazing
love
thing in
it.
the world. But
You
I
should
can
go to
give you all of
Oscar's, that's our
Vanda's
favorite restaurant there.
Yeah, Oscars is our favorite. We love the section of Windy Hill.
Yeah,
I don't know that. I know that the Vanna White ice cream shop is
It's a little
it's on
further, it's like it's at the
getting
southern
closer
end, right?
to Myrtle
Right.
as you cross in, and it's called, like, Painters. It's something
Yes.
kind
Yep.
of random, but they have a Vanna banana split, I think, is the namesake ice cream. But no, next time you guys go, you'll have to check in with me. We'll see if we're there at the same time. But,
please.
I'll tell you what,
it's so much
it
fun.
is such a lovely place down there to just
Mhm.
relax. I don't know what that like, in the sections of if I could just cut out, like,
Myrtle proper.
50 miles of the if I
Go
could just go
straight
right
down to, yeah, to
from
Merle's Inlet.
well, Murrells Inlet and Sockasty, I'd be happy, you know?
There are some there's a little island down there called Polly's Island,
I
which is
love it.
already
Yes.
adorable. Yeah, and so a lot of fun stuff to see and explore down there. But yeah, the
Yeah,
proud birthplace of Vanna White right there on the sign.
we proposed to Rebecca for our 10th anniversary at, Brooklyn Gardens down there,
Yes.
yeah, so
It was amazing. We
So
love it
great.
down there, but
yeah.
I will say, like, there's another we could ask for sponsorships from this too, okay? But there's also the Dead Dog Saloon, which
Oh,
is
down in
an homage
Merle's
to in
Inlet,
Merle's
yeah.
Inlet to every good boy or good girl that
Mhm.
in
Oh,
the whole it's the decor. It's just to honor dogs, and it sits
Yep.
right on the waterway, and you can take your drink from place to place or take, like, a sunset cruise and learn
Mhm.
all about the
We did that,
oysters and
yeah, that's
stuff,
nice.
but
that's
yeah,
fun. Yeah,
yeah.
the little town on the other side of North Myrtle is called Little River,
Okay, yep.
and they have a place called Cooper's Tavern. There's a couple other Cooper's establishment, but Cooper is a dog. Cooper was either a golden retriever or a lab, but you go in and it's the memorial of, this incredibly special puppy, and I love that. I'm a dog mom anyway, so I
Yeah.
definitely love, you know, that area, that little bubble is such an appreciation for the history of their town, but also the loved ones of their families, including their four-legged varieties. So it's a very special little place, and of course Vanna's from there because Vanna's a very special person.
Yes,
Love it.
definitely. Well, it was an absolute pleasure, and you know, if you're hanging around anytime that you wanna just come back on and have a episode just about the Evans women, we're more than available because I could probably talk about them for a full hour too. But February 24th, make sure you get Dollface and Another Fine
Paperback.
Mess on paperback if you don't
Mhm.
have it already. Obviously, there's some big news for an anthology coming up, but we are so excited. Where can we find you? I know you're going on tour for Dollface too, right?
I am. So I am heading out on tour. My first stop will be at the Southern Voices Conference in Hoover, Alabama, which is like the 28th of February. But then I'll be doing a round trip through Texas, up in Ohio and Missouri. I'm kind of all over the place doing some Dollface tours. So the full tour list is on my social media. I'm on Instagram only at Lindy Ryan Writes. And I also have a Substack at the same name. But yeah, so we'll have a new anthology announcement dropping very soon and a new standalone novel announcement dropping very soon. So lots of fun to be had in
So excited.
2027. We're planning for a brighter 2027.
Yes, ma'am. Well, and we would love to see when you get your puppy. Stay in tune for
He will
the
be
April
all over the
pictures.
place. Yes, yes, yes. I get new pics from the service kennel every Friday, and I am loving he was born on January 23rd, and I'm loving watching the litter grow and looking at
Oh
all
my
those little
gosh.
boopable snoots. They're so cute,
Yes!
and, can't wait to have a new puppy coming home in April, and he should be making his tour debut in August at Dark Ink 3 up in Doylestown. That'll probably be his
Well,
first
then we'll
public
We'll
definitely
be
do it.
debut.
there.
I'm just
Yep.
gonna put it on
Yeah.
my calendar
Just
now.
go ahead and mark it. That's gonna be this is the 3rd year that Doylestown Bookshop will host Dark Ink. It is, I think one of my absolute favorite horror events of the year because there's so many of us there. That community in Doylestown is incredible. So if you can
Yes.
only do one big horror convention, I'm gonna vote for Dark Ink 3 because it's awesome.
Well, I love that. We'll keep that in mind, and also there's a Trader Joe's out there close by that I could pick up some appropriate dog treats for
Yeah,
your
let's
new
go
puppy.
shopping.
Wrap that in one
Get
more
those
time for Trader Joe's.
sponsorships while we're there.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
Alright, thanks so much for your time, Lindy. It's been a blast.
Thank you both, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.